Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, we're jumping right into something pretty big happening in tech.
Yeah, it's this really escalating competition over AI.
Between OpenAI, they're the ones who made ChatGPT, and, well, Google, the king of search. Right.
For now, anyway. And this isn't just, a minor rivalry. It feels like it could genuinely change things in a big way.
Like how we find information, how we use technology every day. That's the potential scale we're talking about.
Absolutely. And look, if you feel like you're just drowning in AI headlines lately, you're definitely not alone.
Totally get that.
So our mission here in this deep dive is really to pull out the most important bits based on this great piece from the Standard.
Yeah, we want to get a handle on what each side is trying to do, why it's such a big deal, and, well, where this whole thing might be headed.
Okay, so let's maybe rewind a bit back to, what was it, November 2022.
Right. OpenAI drops ChatGPT. It wasn't just a ripple. It was like a tidal wave.
Seriously, the user numbers were staggering.
Yep.
100 million users.
In just 2 months. I mean, that kind of growth just doesn't happen usually. It definitely set off some alarms.
Especially, you'd imagine, inside Google.
Oh, for sure. The Standard actually talks about Google's reaction internally. They paint a picture of, well, almost panic.
A code red meeting, I think they called it. Which tells you they saw this not just as some new app, but as a real fundamental challenge.
To their main business, right?
Yeah.
Search. How people get information.
Exactly. And it wasn't just internal panic. Remember Google's stock price in 2022?
Oof, yeah. It took a serious hit. Dropped nearly 40% over the year.
Which wasn't just about ChatGPT being cool tech. It was the market saying, uh-oh, is Google's dominance in search and all that ad money actually under threat here?
That kind of financial reaction really hammers home the immediate shockwaves ChatGPT sent out. It shows even giants can be shaken.
It really does. And there's this social scientist, Alexandra Herman from the University of Zurich. She studies Google. And she points out how quickly Google shifted gears. They suddenly started pushing really hard on developing their own large language models.
LLMs, right? The tech behind things like ChatGPT.
Exactly. These complex systems train on just massive amounts of text, so they can talk like humans, basically. Google's sudden sprint suggests that maybe, just maybe, after years on top,
They'd gotten a little comfortable, a bit complacent.
perhaps, and that rush to catch up might have, affected the quality of what they put out initially.
Oh, yeah, you have to wonder about that speed versus accuracy thing. The Standard actually brings up a pretty public stumble, didn't they?
They did. February 2023. Google showing off their competitor to ChatGPT.
And it gets a fact wrong. Something about the James Webb Space Telescope?
That's the one. A bit awkward, especially for a company whose whole brand is built on providing correct information.
Yeah, not the best look.
Definitely not ideal, but, despite that early hiccup, Google hasn't backed off. They've really doubled down.
Pouring money into AI, right, like their Gemini model.
Exactly. And we're seeing the result now in search. It's changing.
It really is. Those classic 10 blue links. They're kind of getting pushed down the page, aren't they?
Yeah, in favor of these AI-generated summaries at the top. That's a massive shift in how Google presents information. Monumental, really.
And the CEO, Sundar Pichai, he's basically said as much.
Yeah.
Calling 2025 pivotal.
Saying search will change profoundly. That's a pretty clear signal they're all in on AI for search.
But is everyone buying it? Is this AI summary thing working perfectly?
Well, that's where it gets interesting. There's a search consultant, Lily Ray, based in New York.
Okay, what's her take?
She points out this kind of disconnect. Google says, users are really happy with these AI summaries. But then you see all these examples online, people sharing screenshots of the AI getting things wrong, sometimes hilariously wrong.
Right, these aren't just small errors either.
Yeah.
They highlight a real challenge with these LLMs, don't they?
Absolutely. They can sound incredibly confident even when they're completely making stuff up, which raises big questions about relying on them for, actual facts. It damages trust.
And trust is everything for Google. The Standard had some wild examples, didn't they?
Oh, yeah. The AI apparently said tomato soup freezes at 49 degrees Fahrenheit, which is not correct.
Not even close.
And another one where it just invented explanations for made-up phrases using fake Cockney rhyming slang. Just completely nonsensical.
It's funny, but also kind of worrying. Like Lily Ray says, the AI is designed to sound right, even when it's dead wrong.
Exactly, and that's potentially risky if people are using search for important, reliable information.
So why is Google pushing so hard if there are still these kinks to work out?
Well, one potential motivation, according to the Standard, is Wall Street. The shareholders.
Ah, money talks.
Pretty much. Remember that stock drop in 2022? Well, after they started pushing AI hard, the stock actually recovered quite a bit, hit a peak in January 2024.
So investors like the AI strategy, even with the glitches.
It seems that way. The market sees potential there, even if the tech isn't perfect yet. It's that classic balancing act, isn't it? Innovate for users, but also keep the investors happy.
Makes sense. And Google's official line.
The Standard quotes a spokesperson talking about their momentum in AI and how they're putting it into all their popular products.
Okay, so Google's definitely in the race, pushing hard, maybe hitting some bumps. But what about the other side? OpenAI.
Right, because Google isn't operating in isolation here. The Standard makes it clear. Sam Altman and OpenAI, they have big plans too. They're not just sitting still.
And it's not just about making ChatGPT better.
Apparently not. There's an analyst, Alexander Platt at D.A. Davidson, who describes OpenAI's shift. They're moving from being just a frontier lab,
Like focused on pure research.
yeah, to becoming more of a consumer application enterprise. Meaning they want to build products that people use directly. It's a big strategic change, suggesting they're thinking much more broadly now about market share, user experience, that kind of thing.
Okay, so what does that look like in practice? Any examples?
The Standard has some really interesting tidbits, like OpenAI reportedly talked to Samsung
About what?
about potentially getting their AI tech built into Samsung phones as the default. Imagine that.
Wow, that would put their AI straight into millions, maybe billions of hands.
Exactly. And then there's this other potential move, acquiring a startup called IO Products.
Never heard of them.
It was founded by Jony Ive,
The Jony Ive from Apple.
the very same, and his startup is apparently working on smartphones, smart home devices.
Okay, wait, so OpenAI might not just be doing the software, they could be getting into the actual hardware.
That seems to be the implication. Think about what an AI-first experience could really mean. Not just an app you open, but AI baked into the operating system, the device itself. Maybe even anticipating what you need before you ask.
That's a very different vision. It really shows their ambition, doesn't it?
Yeah.
To build this whole integrated experience.
It absolutely does. And it gets even more intriguing. Remember the Google Antitrust trial?
Vaguely, yeah.
Yeah.
The U.S. Justice Department thing.
Right. Well, OpenAI's head of product for ChatGPT, a guy named Nick Turley, testified.
Yeah.
And he apparently said that if Google were ever forced to sell off Chrome, its web browser, OpenAI would be very interested in buying it.
Buying Chrome. Wow. Why?
According to the Standard, Turley's reasoning was clear. Owning Chrome would be the ultimate way to deliver that AI-first experience to users. Deep integration right into the main way people access the internet.
Given how dominant Chrome is. Yeah, that would be incredibly powerful. A massive platform.
Huge. And you have to remember, that antitrust case against Google is still ongoing.
So the Standard is suggesting that if Google does get broken up, and if OpenAI somehow manages to grab Chrome.
It could completely reshape the tech landscape.
Yeah.
A massive shift in power.
Okay, so let's try and wrap this up. We've got this really intense situation unfolding.
Definitely. On one hand, you have Google kind of scrambling to catch up, trying to reinvent its core product search with AI, but also facing these very real, very public issues with accuracy.
And maybe feeling pressure from Wall Street, too.
Seems likely. Then on the other hand, you've got OpenAI. They fired the first shot with ChatGPT, tasted success.
And now they're not just refining the AI, they're looking bigger, pushing into consumer products, maybe hardware, maybe even trying to control how we access the web itself via Chrome.
Exactly. The key things to take away from this standards reporting are, first, just how disruptive ChatGPT was. Second, Google's massive strategic pivot and the challenges they're facing with AI quality control.
And third, OpenAI's clear ambition to move way beyond just language models into our devices, our software, maybe even our hardware. The stakes are incredibly high.
They really are. Which leads to maybe a final thought for you, the listener.
Yeah.
Just think about what that AI-first experience might actually feel like day to day. As this fight between Google and OpenAI plays out, how could their wins, their losses, their strategies, how could all that fundamentally change the technology you use every single day?
That's definitely something to chew on. A lot could change.